So today I'm going to be taking a look at the newest release from Zelos. I've never experienced a Zelos watch before. They're mainly known for like dive watches in like the 300-ish, 500-ish territory. But this is their first dress watch. It is actually a little pricier at around the $750 range, and let's see how it is. We're going to have a diameter of 38 millimeters, a lug to lug of just 44, a height of 8.7, and a lug width of 20 millimeters. So some other general specifications for this watch. It's going to have the ETA 7001 in it, very similar to the Nomos Alpha caliber. It's what the Nomos Alpha is based off of. So a pretty popular hand-wound movement for kind of the around $1,000 price point. We're going to have 100 meters of water resistance without a screw-down crown. Sapphire on the front and back, and on the front we kind of have a nice domed slash, well, it's more of a box-shaped sapphire. And we have BGW9 Lume on the indices and the hands. And this retails this particular version for $799, but it is actually sold out now. There is also a meteorite version for $869, and I believe 3 other kind of like regular dial versions for $769. So taking a look at the dial here, because that's pretty much what you'll be getting this version for, and overall, I mean, all the offerings for the dials are pretty nice. But in particular here, we have the Aventurine dial watch, and basically Aventurine is kind of debatable. It's either glass or it is kind of more of a quartz material that has kind of speckling of either iron, copper, gold, etc., some other types of minerals inside of it, which gives it this nice kind of sparkly, effervescent, just almost starry night quality to it, which is not only pretty to look at, but it's also pretty cool because it is a very dynamic dial. It's very changing in its just textural and presentation that it gives you. And I just think it looks pretty cool because it has this kind of like really, really dark, deep blue coloration that sometimes looks black, sometimes looks very vivid blue. And it's just a pretty cool thing you don't see on many watches. Other than that, they did a very pretty much simple dial here. We just have regular kind of stick indices, obviously a little thicker because they're actually applied stainless steel indices. On the very tips, we have lume plots. If you can actually see, the markers themselves are actually angled down at the very tips of them, which is a pretty nice detail. A kind of railroad style second track on the outside, which just holds the extra minutes. And very simple Zelos applied in the metal there. Sub-seconds track highlighted at the 5-minute markers with this little white dots. Yeah, overall very, very clean dial. Very, very simple. Not overdone in any way, and it kind of just lets the dial shine in itself. Just taking a closer look at this dial, we can see really how detailed it is. It really just looks like a bunch of kind of rocks, minerals, gemstones just smashed together, crumbled up, put onto a surface, and just shining beautifully. It is really awesome how kind of random but almost purposeful everything is on the dial. The metal applications don't look too out of place. I think the actual indices in themselves are decently done. As you can see, there's like some speckling on them. There's going to be a little roughness around the markers themselves. This is kind of to be expected at a sub-$1,000 price point. You can't really expect the world. Have I seen better? Yes. Is this by any means the worst? Also no. So you kind of do in general get what you pay for. But overall, as we can see, this is just really a beautifully, beautifully done dial. It has such a cool texture to it, such a cool life to it, really. You kind of get that nice, deep, kind of bluish black coloration with those nice pops of lighter blue, kind of white, silver specks. Once you get that down to some brighter light, forgive the, the glare, but once you get it into some brighter light, you can really just see how bright of a blue it becomes, how much the dial elements just really pop out at you, how almost in your face the texture can become, the pattern can become. And that's something I do really like about Aventurine. Just depending on how the manufacturer makes it or how they treat it, it can be very, very bright and vivid at times, and then very, very dull and subdued at other times, leading to almost what some would say is a little bit of overkill in the looks department. And then when it's very, very mellow, more of a shady area, it becomes very, very subtle, very beautiful, and almost like a starry sky. Overall, Zelos did a really good job with this dial, I think. I think it looks really cool. I think it's interesting, and it's definitely not something you really see happening very often, and I commend them on that. So getting into this case, it is overall very plain. It is nice because it is at both a smaller size and a shorter lug-to-lug length. But as you can see, they did a mostly brush finishing here. We can see a circular brushing around the lugs here, a kind of regular vertical brushing on the lug sides. We have a nice little geometric cutout on the lugs here, which definitely do add some character to the case. I wish it would have been almost a little more pronounced, something that maybe turned in a little bit more so you can just see a little bit of a point of interest, you know? We do have a signed crown there. If it focuses, there we go, signed crown there by Zelos. We do have a slight amount of polish on the bezel here. I would have liked to see a little bit more polish. Again, this is kind of a dressier leaning watch, so some, you know, chamfering along the edges would have been nice, or even some polishing on the case sides even. We can see there we have that box sapphire crystal. Very cool, adds a little bit of vintage flair to the watch. Flipping over to the case back real quick. Very, very plainly done, maybe even overly plain. But we can see just some general information, the Zelos ETA, we have the serial number, or at least the number that it is out of the 100 pieces that were made. And we do have this pretty decently, nicely finished ETA movement in there, just beating away. And of course, we should talk about the bracelet a little bit. It is very, very nicely made. However, I don't think it fits in with the watch. The brushing looks completely different at the lugs than it does on the actual bracelet itself. It's kind of almost a mismatch in the way it just kind of combines with the watch. I don't think it goes and flows perfectly, but the bracelet itself as a standalone product is very, very well made. It is very, very smooth, lots and lots of articulation. We got solid screw links in here. You can see we have a little bit of polish along the edges there, and it's a very, very smooth, very supple, almost just silky transition from the lug ends over here to the polished sides. It is very nicely done. You don't really see this kind of 7-link style of bracelet very often. Usually if it is done, it's done in a more Jubilee type style. But I think the way this bracelet's executed in general is really nice. I don't love the fact that they went with a butterfly clasp. Basically with a butterfly clasp, you don't have micro adjust. If you're in between sizes, you kind of are out of luck, which I don't love. I would have nice to see just a regular, you know, scissor clasp there, as some people say. Nice little fold over. I think it would have been much better. I don't think it would have taken away anything from the design, but something to note a little bit. But it is a very comfortable bracelet. It fits well on wrist. Fortunately, I was able to size it to a way it fits my wrist. Really good design elements. I just don't necessarily think they all blend together perfectly. So going on to trying this watch on the wrist, earlier I was wearing my Les Sablier, or Le Sablier, or however you want to pronounce this. But basically this is another Aventurine dial watch, and this retails closer to the $400 or $500 mark. I think this one's done a lot less aggressively in the Aventurine texture than the Zelos is. But yeah, stay tuned, review coming on this one. I do really like this piece. So there we go with the Zelos on my 6.5 inch wrist, and I think you can tell it fits awesomely. The 38mm size for the case is great to see it, you know, them not go for 40, them actually cater to a regular smaller size. The way that the lugs are very, very short also helps it wear really well. Doesn't have any male end links, so no extra flare out there. The watch wears really well. It wears very slim. It wears very close to the wrist. Overall, really, really, really a comfortable watch to wear. I do enjoy wearing it. It feels good on the wrist. There's no hair pulling from the bracelet or anything like that, which is nice. Yeah, and as you can see from the side profile there, I mean, pretty much sits right inside of the wrist. It's just super comfortable, super flat. Well, not really flat, but really ergonomic, curved to the wrist, conforms to the wrist. Really a pleasure to wear, and overall that Aventurine dial is just, it is just pretty. And as always for the Lume comparison, we're gonna be comparing the Zelos to my Timex Snoopy here. I did get a comment once that basically saying you can't really compare regular Lume to Indiglo, and the only reason I do this is because Indiglo is not only a very affordable form of luminescence, but most people know what Indiglo looks like. Most people can kind of compare the brightness in relativity to another watch. So it gives a nice kind of almost base point. I don't really expect any watch to be overly better than Indiglo in any way, but it just gives a nice jumping off point. So as we can see here, again, we do have BGW9 on the watch here. BGW9, as is expected, it glows very well. It has a nice blue temperature to it, which I prefer personally over the green temperature. It glows well. Those indices aren't huge, but it does last for a fair amount. What I really do like that they executed well is all the color temperatures match. The hands aren't any more luminescent than the markers are. It is all very evenly done. It looks well done, and I appreciate that they did Lume well here. Reluming and comparing to the Snoopy, I mean, as you can see, the color temperatures are pretty much almost the same. Obviously, the Timex has a little more surface area, but as you can see, they're basically as readable as each other. The Zelos is definitely no slouch when it comes into the Lume. Again, not a lot of Lume surface, so it's not going to last forever, but while it does last, it is very functional. So here we have the Zelos on the black Horween leather strap that is provided. It does have this kind of classic vintage stitch, which is really popular right now. Unfortunately, it did come out of the box with these kind of little blemishes on them, but nothing's perfect. And I do think it fits with the watch well. The strap does feel comfortable. It has a thickness to it. It doesn't feel cheap or flimsy by any means. And the buckle, which usually is really much of an afterthought, is actually really, really well done. It has a sculpted shape to it. It has actually polished chamfers. It fits really well into the tang fits really well into its little placement there. And overall, I think on the wrist, the leather strap does give it a different vibe. It does give it a different feel. It definitely makes it more casual, makes it a little bit more fun. Would I personally go for this black leather? No, I think it's a little too plain, a little too boring in a lot of ways, but I think it does let the watch shine in itself, which is definitely a thing that can be interesting for some people. And this is another combo I'll show you. This is kind of what I really would wear it on if I'm not wearing it on the bracelet. And this is a black rubber strap. This one in particular is from Notice here. Very, very comfortable. I don't think you can buy this from them. I'm not 100% sure, but it comes with some of their dive watches. A very comparable strap is the similar type rubber from Monster Strap Co. I also have one of those. And although this black strap also could be seen as, boring like the black leather was, I do think it actually is a little bit more interesting in the fact that it is a little bit more sporty leaning. It definitely dresses down the watch. I will just always be a big fan of silicone or in rubber. It just is comfortable to wear. It will always be good to wear in summer months. In colder months, it still doesn't look out of place. I think the plain texture of rubber really goes well with a lot of dials and textures and just colors. So I think this combination works really well. I think it looks really good on the watch, and yeah, that's my take. So just really quickly, I know I usually do pros first and then I go to cons, but I do want to point out this kind of con first and foremost. And to me, I think I'm not really in love with the dial design itself. So I think the dial is good. I think it is a good attempt at a dial, and I love a sub-seconds personally. But I think the Lume is kind of almost there just to kind of please people. It doesn't necessarily fit the aesthetic itself. The Lume, especially at a lot of angles, a lot of different lighting situations, looks not only like an afterthought, but I think it just would look better if the Lume wasn't there at all. This is definitely more of a dressier piece, so it is really meant to be worn in dressier situations. You most likely will have a light nearby, or you will not be in a completely dark lit room, or dark room that's not lit really. And I just think if they would have taken the Lume off and just let the silver indices shine in their own right, it would have actually looked a little bit cleaner, looked a little bit classier, and looked a little bit better. So now getting into some pros and cons of the watch. For me, some of the main pros include just the size of it. Again, I love a watch under 40 millimeters. The 38 millimeter fits great. It has a small lug to lug, so it actually fits really well on the wrist as well. And overall, I just really like how it wears. And other than that, I think the bracelet is really, really well made. It is very comfortable. It looks really good. And overall, it was really a pleasure to wear. Overall, I think the Aventurine dial is just a cool thing to have. It's just kind of a talking point to have in the collection. It's something that definitely looks different than anything else you would have. And I think it is a little bit aggressive at times, but it is still really, really cool. For the cons of the watch, I don't really have many. Again, as I was talking about the bracelet, I don't think it fits perfectly stylistically with the watch. The brushing patterns on the bracelet and the actual case are very, very different. They either should have went with a vertically brushed case lug, or they should have had, well, either way, they should have had definitely a more defined brushing along the bracelet itself, or a more fine brushing on the case itself. Again, just either way, the brushing patterns don't really match between the watch and the bracelet, which I don't love. It kind of seems like a lack of attention to detail to me personally. And just kind of reiterating, I don't love the fact that the watch uses Lume. I think it would have looked better without it. I don't love how harsh the Aventurine can look sometimes. I do think in very direct light, it kind of almost errs on the side of being almost cheap in a way. I don't love to use that word, but it kind of looks of a lesser quality than I know it actually is. But other than that, I would just say the main con of it is if you're not necessarily looking for like a cool Aventurine dial, there are a lot of other things out there at the price point. I mean, even if you do want an Aventurine dial, we have the Les Sablier here, or Les Sablier, again, however you want to say it. We have this watch that's at like the 400-ish price mark, at least right now, I believe, for pre-order kind of, or at least, discounted pricing. But yeah, you have other competitors. You have Young Hands, you have used Nomoses. I remember I sold a Nomos Club, the 36mm version, for around $750, $800. So that's literally right in the ballpark of this watch. So it does have almost some kind of stiff competition. Now, are there a lot of, just in general, dress watches out there? Not really. And being a very big dress watch fan, that does kind of suck for me. But I do think the watch is overall well made. Do I think it is made to the specifications that I thought it should have been? No. I think there is a lot of area for improvement. I think they could have done something more interesting with the case. They could have refined the dial a little bit. They could have made the dial pattern a little less harsh. But overall, it really is a cool watch. If you're looking for something a little bit more unique, something a little bit more interesting to add to the collection, and maybe you already have some other micro brands, or you already have kind of like the heavy hitters in your collection, you just want a fun piece that feels different, this can be it. Is it going to blow you away at the price point? No. Is there better made stuff out there at the price point? Yes. But overall, it is a cool watch. If you see this video and you still like everything about the watch, you will be happy with it. And overall, can't complain too much. It is an admirable first attempt at a dress watch from a brand that mostly does dive watches and kind of tool-ish leaning watches. And I'm kind of excited to see what they come out with in the future. They're definitely probably going to take all the feedback and create something that maybe blows our socks off next time around. But hope you got something from this video. Hope to see you in another one.